what are your wishes of the minutes?
I'll make a first motion to approve the minutes.
Moved by Harris. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Kemp North. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. First item is to review comments from the May 18th public meeting hearing. We had some comments. I don't know that they're changing necessarily where we're going, but just wanted to open up to the task force members to see if, as a result of any of those comments or subsequent comments that you may have had, whether there were any other issues that you wanted to either revisit or visit. Okay, and then the next item is discussion of possible action on the finalization of the recommendations and report. And remember, again, this is our recommendations. It does not implement anything. Ultimately, there are other bodies that we talked about in the dependencies section that will need to take action on these items. Does anybody have any suggested changes? Katie, do you want to just touch base with some of the, you may have made just some updates to reflect later action?
Yeah. So we'll just, I don't know why this is so slow. It's been a day, tell you what. All right, the stuff that I added at the request of the chair is related to the findings. So we put in there the information on the demographics. We thought that was important. So I don't think this is any different than what you recall seeing, but we just made sure that we put it in there. And then related on the performance metrics, how folks graded the police department.
So any other comments? Pat?
Yeah, at the last meeting, I expressed interest in having the police chief refresh our memories on the screening procedures for new officers to weed out basically potential bigots and problems. I was wondering if we could take a few minutes for that. Is that something you recall, Chief? I think it would be good to, that was important for me, and I thought it would be important for us to review that
Sure.
Prior to approval.
So just to clarify, you're asking the scrutiny and the screening process for our initial hire of a police officer?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a number of steps within our process. Those steps are voted on and approved by our Police and Fire Commission. So in our Police and Fire Commission manual, that's where those steps are identified and laid out. And that's been a process that's been in place for a number of years now. So in our process, we, our motto of hiring is we hire for character and we train for skill. And I think that's identified through our entire hiring process. And we do a lot of hiring. We run usually several hiring processes a year. And so, we do this regularly. So the process is this. We accept applications. The applications are screened for initial meeting minimum requirements. In the state of Wisconsin, a certified police officer needs to have 60 college credits and be able to legally carry a firearm. So if they meet those minimum requirements, we invite them to an initial first interview. And that first interview actually consists of 2 interviews. One is done by our a first-line supervisor and field training officers, and then a subsequent interview on the same day immediately following that first interview with a member of our command staff team, either a captain, deputy chief, or myself. And if candidates make it through that initial interview, they're invited back a few weeks later for a second interview. And that second interview process is similar in that it's divided into 2 different groups. But with the first interview with field trainers and a first line supervisor, they also are required to bring in a background packet of information. And so that background packet of information is the beginning, if they make it through that day to the next step of the hiring process. We will conduct a background investigation. And so that background investigation packet consists of about 30 pages front and back, and they're telling us all about their life history. They list every address that they've ever lived at, parents, siblings, spouse if they have one, children's names, and they identify drugs that they've used, crimes that they've been convicted of, crimes that they've committed that they've not been convicted of, and a wide variety of information contained within that background investigation packet. And the first thing that we tell them is that honesty is of the utmost importance, because we have to be able to believe that the person is trustworthy if they're going to carry position of a police officer. So they complete the background packet, they go through an interview on that second day with field trainers and a first line supervisor, and then a subsequent interview that's more in depth with the command staff team. If they make it through that process, we assign usually a detective to do a background investigation. That work usually requires about 40 hours worth of a detective's time to conduct that background investigation. Often, if they're a candidate that's from the state of Wisconsin or a neighboring state, we will send that background investigator to their hometown, let them talk to the police department or high school classmates and teachers, talk with the law enforcement agency that they grew up in to see if there's any law enforcement contacts. We talk to their previous employers to make sure that they have a good employment history. We always talk with spouses if they have one. We also try to talk to parents if the parents are willing to talk with us. And we do a lot of background investigation to figure out who the individuals are. We do open records searches as well as criminal history, of course, to determine that. And we also go through that background packet and see if there's anything that we would identify as a potential red flag that might be of concern, and we investigate that. The background investigator at the end of that does a personal interview with the candidate to identify any concerns and clarify any issues that they've identified within that background investigation. Once that background investigation is complete, if there wasn't anything that was disqualifying, we'll bring them back for a third interview with the command staff team. And if they make it through that command staff interview, then they go to a polygraph examination. And so we have a polygraph examiner within the police department. He is a detective, and we again go through a background packet that's supplied by the polygraph examiner, and we will try to determine whether or not they are a truthful individual or not, because again, that is of the utmost importance. If they make it through the polygraph examination, then they will typically receive a conditional offer of employment, and that offer of employment is conditioned upon their successful completion of a polygraph a psychological examination, a medical examination, and then a final interview with the Police and Fire Commission. So we send them to a psychological examination with a psychological examiner that does nothing but police and fire psychological exams and fit for duty examinations. We get a report on their psychological health for law enforcement specifically. So if they pass that and they go through the medical exam and they're medically fit, they'll go through an interview with the Police and Fire Commission, which is the final step in the hiring process. And then we'll give them a start date after they complete the final interview with the Police and Fire Commission.
Would any racial bias on the part of the applicant be the point where that would be discovered would be the psychological exam, or is it touched on during earlier interviews?
Yeah, we ask a lot of questions, and we do a lot of investigation into them. I think I feel very confident that if there is evidence that exists either out in the land of something that's an open search type of thing through the internet, we would find that if they've, been part of we ask about being parts of a hate group and those kinds of things. We do open source searches and to try to identify those things. Psychological examination does have a component of bias and that kind of thing, although that is something I think that if the psychologist were here, he would tell you that that's something that isn't always the easiest to identify, but that is something that is in his mind as he's talking with people to identify. So nothing's perfect, for sure, but I think we have a very in-depth process, and that if there was signs and symptomology of somebody who was a racist individual, we would identify that. And I would say furthermore that certainly if they are in our employment and there are signs and symptoms of them being a racist person, that the likelihood that they would continue employment is zero.
Ben, how does that process compare to other departments? It sounds like a very thorough, rigorous process. Is that one of the more rigorous ones that you're aware of?
It's hard to compare. There's so many different ways that agencies go about hiring. We have probably more interviews than most agencies. Most agencies don't do a polygraph examination. But I would say the vast majority of the rest of the process is pretty similar in terms of a background investigation. I would say maybe not every department is as thorough in a background investigation as we are. But most departments do a psychological examination, and certainly medical examination, so that's pretty standard in law enforcement, at least in Wisconsin.
All right, are there any questions? So ultimately, it's up to the Police and Fire Commission to make that final offer.
Yeah, the Police and Fire Commission is a hiring authority by statute in the state of Wisconsin, so they have hiring and actually termination authority.
So how much of that evaluation process is shared with them at the point of hiring? So
Well,
I would assume that if somebody has a lot of red flags, they're not going to make it that far.
Right. Yeah, they've delegated the process to me as the chief of police, and they see the candidate. They can ask the candidate any questions they want at the interview, but we don't typically, as a practice, share a background investigation or that kind of thing with the Police and Fire Commission.
Any questions? If not, thank you for that.
Thank you.
So any other questions? If not, a motion would be in order to finalize the recommendations in the report. Pat?
Motion to finalize this and send it on to the council.
Is there a second? Council, Police and Fire Commission and Department, if you would.
All of the above, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Can you pull up the addendum relative to the plan of action? That item that I sent? For the packet. So one of the things we were tasked with doing was developing a plan of action, and you have a very rough plan that was based upon some discussions that I had with the chief and others in an effort to, what we did is we took and put additional columns into the dependencies section, if you recall, and then we identified action steps. And I clearly would welcome additional comments. So the first item is the expansion of crisis assessment response team. The action steps would be enter into discussions with North Central Healthcare about expanding CART services. And that would be, the committee of jurisdiction would be Public Health and Safety Committee for the council. Before I do that, one of the things that I had talked to the chief about and we'll be pursuing is requesting time at the County Public Safety Committee to present our findings so that they understand what we're doing, because many of these items will impact not only how we interact with North Central Healthcare, but could have ramifications upon the operations of the Sheriff's Department. So we would look to do a presentation to that Public Safety Committee to share those results and hopefully garner some support. So relative to the Crisis Assessment Response Team, I think it's beyond our control, but we would put that request in and have the discussions with the North Central Healthcare and really the North Central Community Services Program Board about expansion. And there's a chance that within that the county may also look to expand those services to beyond the 8 to 5.
I'm just wondering if also we could invite some of those other folks from maybe North Central Board or even Health and Safety Committee when we do that presentation so that a lot of people understand what it is we're looking at. And I'll be relying on you to be that conduit, but I'll show up wherever you need me.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when you say we're going to enter into discussions, who's going to do that?
I think one of the things is that we're going to look to the mayor to do that. You know, I'm willing to sit through some of those. We would encourage other members of the task force that have interest, if we could let them know. We will disband after this evening, so we're there as citizens, but we can let you know when there are items that are up before them. I think we would look to administration and the department and the Public Safety Committee and the City Council to then carry this on.
Okay, city administration is going to be responsible for the action steps that we set out tonight. Right?
Yep.
Very good. Load her up.
And then continue homeless outreach services in the police department, but transition work to a social worker, and I've been informed that that has passed the city council, so we are successful. So there's no need to take action. Request North Central continue to pursue strategies for community-based case management services and set up a meeting with North Central Community Services Program Board and North Central Healthcare Management to discuss the need for case management services. Share this report with the County Public Safety Committee again, and it would be the North Central Community Services Program Board that would make that decision. Toward that, I've already had some discussions with Administrator Leonard and County Board Chair Gibbs about some of our requests. I know that there are some budget issues, but I think that we still need to push and advance these items with those groups because they're critical for the success of these efforts. Anything you want to add to that? Any thoughts? All right. Request that the legislature clarify and address law enforcement's role and commitments in civil services, and then draft a resolution supporting changes to 5115 of Wisconsin statutes to clarify the role of law enforcement to be sent to area legislators, governor, and attorney general from the Public Health and Safety Committee. So we would work with them on trying to advance a letter. I don't know if the Police and Fire Commission will, if at any time you feel as if the Police and Fire Commission, these are not meant to be exclusive, but clearly we would look to support from other groups in any and all of these efforts.
Yeah, I guess, as much as I can speak for the rest of the commission, certainly from my standpoint, Police and Fire Commission should be supportive of these measures and moving forward. So whatever you need from me on that end. But you're saying just to clarify, the Public Health and Safety, they will be the ones in charge of drafting the resolution is what we're proposing? Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, specially trained mental health providers and services for police officers. Continue the contract with EAP professionals with law enforcement expertise. Ensure that new EAP contractor, when chosen his expertise, create a benefit for officers without co-pays and deductibles, or provide funding to cover those costs. And that would be Police and Fire Commission, Public Health and Safety Committee. Any thoughts on that one? All right. Expand and invest in mental health training resources. work with police department management to continue to expand crisis intervention training and ensure it is provided to all officers and updated on a regular basis. And Ben, you currently provide the crisis intervention training as a requirement for all new officers. So we would then look to do that, and perhaps that is something that we could also task the Police and Fire Commission with doing as part of the ongoing training and evaluation, Will, if that would make sense.
Yes.
All right, funding of on-call interpretive services and proactively letting the public know that it is available. We continue contract with Boost Lingo for interpretive services and develop a strategy for marketing services through Facebook and/or developing a video providing an overview of these services for the committee. The thought is that if we could have a video on the web page and/or Facebook just saying that these services are available, here's how you access it, that would be developed, and that would probably be an administration and department initiative.
Yes, we can do that.
Any thoughts? All right, yearly cultural awareness education training for police. Invite speakers, presenters with different cultural expertise to present at in-service training sessions for the officers. So we would reach out, and that would be, again, police management that would be responsible for that, and to build it into those in-service training events. All right, learn basic phrases in various languages, work with Wausau Schools, UW, and Boost Lingual to develop a training program to make sure that we are current relative to any changing circumstances as we deal with the relocation of some of the groups that come in. We may need to change that from, in addition to Spanish and Hmong and Pig. Dealing with the Afghan population and others, we'll need to be nimble on that, and I think we would know where those requests for interpretive services are, and we can work with them. All right, develop a multicultural, multimedia communication policy, and I put in work with WIPs or other organizations to develop a strategy communicating with the public. And the reason I inserted WIPs is that they are very good at multicultural and multimedia approaches and have that expertise that many of us do not have. Any other thoughts? Again, we would look to administration to develop that. Conduct a public service campaign about interacting with law enforcement to achieve positive outcomes. There's a typo, but it's develop a partnership with state law enforcement organizations to develop an educational program. Once develop a PSA and marketing plan, including use in the schools. The thought would be that we could work through the school resource officers and others, as well as community organizations. We would look for the Police and Fire Commission and Public Health and Safety Committee to play a leadership role in developing that. But the thought is that there's probably a need for this on a statewide basis, and we've discussed in our discussions, the chief and I were talking about the Police Chiefs Association, Wisconsin Professional Police Association, potentially even the Attorney General's office, but to develop that program. Thoughts?
So just to clarify on that one, with both the Police and Fire Commission, Public Health and Safety, will it be sort of Police and Fire Commission that's sort of initiating and inviting Public Health and Safety in, or is it Public Health and Safety sort of inviting Police and Fire Commission?
I'm thinking, and I can't be inside Mr. Robinson's brain, but it probably would make sense for us to create a proposal and bring it to those committees, if that works. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Initiate formal ongoing dialogue with groups such as Black, Hispanic, Hmong, LGBTQ, new refugees, and other groups. And we said expand the neighbor-to-neighbor concept to meet with these groups. And the thought was we want to give some flexibility to the department to meet with them on a regular basis. But we have a proven concept where we've got community service officers and others that are engaging with them, and we'd want to expand that to make sure that we're doing that outreach. And that would fall primarily on the police department with probably some oversight from the mayor's office. Any thoughts? All right, continue partnerships with research organizations to collect new information on social justice issues in the criminal justice system. Assign a member of the Police Department Management and the Police and Fire Commission to review information on the latest trends and resources. And the lead on that would be the Police and Fire Commission, as well as the Public Health and Safety Committee. And the thought there is that as we look at additional research and find those studies and reports, whether it is something along the lines of what the Professional Police Association did with the Blueprint for Change, or what the President's Commission on Policing in the 21st Century does, we want to make sure that we're current and tracking those needs. And it's important that the department, I think the department has historically done a good job of tracking what the trends are and the developments are, but we want to make sure that there's oversight by a third party, therefore the Police and Fire Commission and the committee. Thoughts?
No, I agree, and we get these, we get the monthly reports, and I think that'd be one source to look to, and just continue to further develop it so we have that information moving forward.
All right. Conduct a regular periodic community survey in its budget and contract with the provider such as WIPs to develop, distribute, and analyze a biennial service. And that would fall under the Public Health and Safety and Finance Committee because of the appropriation of funds. And it is specifically referenced as a biennial. Biennial, is that consistent with trying to get some clarity and a little bit more certainty? Otherwise it gets lost. Any thoughts? Thumbs up. And then engage Metro Ride and transportation services to the homeless, and write a letter to the Transit Commission encouraging them to evaluate services to the homeless population. That would be something that we could potentially pen with the mayor and working with them, and it would fall under the Wausau Transit Commission. But I think that the specific thought would be is that Officer Lemeron would be invited to share his experiences and identify what some of those concerns might be, and try to advance that. And is, Will, you know, and Katie knows, there's currently an evaluation of the services, and I think we need to get that before that group as well. Anything that we are missing? Anything from a broader perspective that you think we should do? Is this specific enough? It doesn't just leave things hanging, but rather gives us the first, and I can't say it's all the steps, but it gives us the first step on where we go.
The only thing I was going to add is just on the last one, we're engaging with Metro Ride and some of the other committees that are working on it. Just make sure that we also engage with some of those nonprofits that directly work with a lot of these vulnerable populations and homeless, and that send them to and from.
So if we were the Transit Commission and nonprofits, if we insert that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. Great suggestion, actually. Other thoughts?
I have a fine point. On the one, it's the fourth one from the bottom where it's initiate formal ongoing dialogue with groups, blah, blah, blah. And you indicated that the responsibility for that would fall on the police department. And I don't know if that's obvious, but maybe in that final box on the right, you would say that the police department is responsible for carrying out this initiative.
Police Department and City Administration?
Sure.
we can do that. Any other comments, suggestions? If not, does anybody wish to make a motion relative to that, subject to the modifications that we made as we went through this? Which would include delineating additional people, adding nonprofits, clarifying the role of the Police and Fire Commission.
Oh,
Moved by Peckham, seconded by Harris.
yes.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the plan of action will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. That concludes the work of the Wausau Policing Task Force. I want to express to you again my sincere appreciation for the time, commitment that you put in, the thought, the perspectives, the expertise, and care and compassion that you brought to this process to the members. And I also want to thank the department for their willingness in support of opening itself up for evaluation, and the community for their participation in the listening sessions, the focus groups, the survey, the public hearing. This is only the start. This is not the end of the process. This puts those issues out there, and as many of the people in the audience know, is that if we don't follow through and if we don't have mechanisms to do some checkups, so we're going to be relying on the mayor and others to make sure that these get some legs, if you will. But if we don't have that commitment and that support to follow through, nothing will happen, particularly in tight budget times. So when appropriate, we will let you know when issues are before, for instance, North Central Community Services Board and others, and encourage you to support any and all of those recommendations should they come up, because I think it's important for them to hear from us that these were important issues. They dealt with human, social, and psychological needs, mental health needs of the members of the community, and they need to be implemented. So again, thank you for your service and your work.
I just want to say thank you as well. This has been a long process, but I think we were very thoughtful. I actually had a couple of folks reach out to me last week saying your work was very impressive, so thank you.
So with that, who would like to make the motion to adjourn?
With praise for our leadership, I would move that we adjourn this body.
It's been moved.
And I will echo those comments and say thank you to everyone, and I will second motion to adjourn.
All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all.